I spend a lot of time making these little 3D landscapes and still lifes, which I love doing, but lately it's been feeling like no matter how much stuff I add, they still feel kind of empty. So I thought it'd be fun to start designing characters that could live in these environments. I'm starting with a robot. Here I'm trying to figure out the head shape. Things are going fine, but I have a problem. I've made enough things to know that the simple prompt, design a robot, is not going to work for me. It creates the ideal conditions for a project that I pour a ton of hours into and then never finish. Here are 2 reasons why. Number 1, choices. From the start, I'm overwhelmed with options. A robot can look a lot of different ways. Without a clear target, I may start out designing something simple, then slowly drift towards something super complex. Along the way, I'll become less and less focused and create more and more work for myself. Number 2, perfectionism. In the absence of any other measure of success, I'll be putting pressure on myself to make the best robot. This is a vague and impossible goal, so I wanted to create some sort of limitation for myself. Here's what I settled on. The robot design needs to be something that I could easily build out of paper in the real world, and I'll actually do a test build of it. This way, I can let the limitations of paper inform my choices. It also takes the pressure off. I don't have to make the best robot ever. I just have to make an endearing paper robot. With that in mind, I kept things really simple and boxy. I wanted him to have this built-in frown. As long as it feels more like a frown than a scowl, I think it makes him endearingly sad. If I treat the eyes like screens, I can use them to express a broader range of emotions. Then the question is, what do we do when he's happy? I thought about treating his mouth like a screen and then having it light up as a smile, but I'm not convinced that works. Even just changing the pupil size can be a good window into his emotional state. I built the rest of the body out of tapered cubes. At this point, I wasn't sure how to make the limbs. I added some curvy tubes as placeholders, even though I didn't think this would be possible to make out of paper. The fingers were also a problem. I was thinking little strips for each finger, but I'm not sure I like that. For a second, I thought maybe he needed a nose, but I was wrong. At this point, I could feel myself starting to overthink things, so I decided to take a break from staring at my computer screen and try folding his head out of paper. Creating a paper model in Blender is super straightforward. The software comes with a free add-on that does it all for you. You just have to activate it. It lays everything out and adds tabs. With a few clicks, I was ready to start folding. This wasn't so bad. The last fold is pretty painful to watch, but I did manage to get everything stuck together. I roughed in the eyes, but accidentally placed them closer together than on the digital model. But I actually liked it. I thought maybe it made them less creepy, so I tried moving them closer together in Blender. It definitely adds more appeal, and to be honest, this guy needs all the appeal he can get. And not to keep being mean, but he does remind me of a fish. I think it's the wide eyes and the frown. Anyway, assembling the head gave me the confidence to get going on the rest of the body. This was way more work than I was imagining. I trusted the Blender add-on completely, so all I needed to do was mindlessly fold, cut, and glue. I used a scoring tool to help with some of the trickier folds. With all the pieces assembled, it was time to figure out the limbs. My first thought was to use strips of paper for the arms, legs, and neck, but that creates several problems. First is the range of motion. It's easy to move side to side, but not forward and back. I guess I could make some sort of shoulder joint, but I didn't want to. Second is the silhouette. From some angles, the arm would just look like a really thin line, which I don't like at all. So I decided to go with this sort of accordion fold. It's basically just a noodle that I can bend in any direction. It can still look sharp and thin from some angles, but I think I can fix that in the digital version. By the end, I was so tired of working on this paper model, but when I first saw the little guy all assembled, it was hard not to feel emotional. After all the labor I went through to bring him into this world, seeing him all together made me really happy. And I know I was making fun of him earlier, saying he was creepy, but I take it all back. So I don't want to see any comments calling him Fish Boy or saying he looks like a grouper, okay? That's mean. Speaking of, if you're having an absolute blast watching this video, you could help me out by letting me know in the comments. Also, like and subscribe. Thanks. Alright, back to the digital world. I still felt I could do more to make the eyes less scary. First, they're perfect circles, so I tried making them subtle ovals. I'm not sure that did much, but I kept it. Second, I pushed the pupils slightly inward towards the center of his head. From my perspective, this made a huge difference. It feels much more like he's looking at you rather than past you into an unending abyss. Next, I needed to figure out how the accordion limbs would work digitally. Modeling them was easy enough. I just added a bunch of edges to a plane, then offset every other edge to make a zigzag. Something about the accordion neck makes me really uncomfortable. It feels like something's wrong. He looks like he's been strangled in a very cartoony way. I kept it though. I've been thinking about his story. It'd be fun to give him a job he's really bad at. I was thinking customer service. In 4th grade, I worked at a McDonald's for a few hours as a reward for being responsible, and someone coming through the drive-thru yelled at me for their order being wrong. And I imagine this is pretty much what I looked like in that moment. This wasn't my intention, but he definitely looks like an overwhelmed 10-year-old kid robot. I gave him tiny accordions for his fingers. I don't like them, but I don't know what else to do. I just don't want people to call them French fry fingers, you know? So at this point, I had all the basics figured out, but I didn't have a target set for where I wanted to be at the end of this video. So I just started aimlessly meandering, which is exactly what I was trying to avoid. And there is some value to meandering. I certainly made a lot of discoveries. Like, now I know for sure if I add lines to his mouth, they look like teeth. I don't have time to talk about everything I tried. So here are 6 highlights. Number 1, I posed him, printed the outlines, and then colored him with marker. I mostly just wanted to see what he looks like in a different medium. Number 2, I painted textures for the model using digital watercolors in Rebelle. Number 3, I did a bit of sculpting to make the model less perfect. Number 4, I started to add some 3D paneling, but it felt like it broke the paper rule. I'm sure I could have done it in a more papery way, but I didn't. Number 5, I made a really simple rig for the arms. It worked surprisingly well. The only problem is that they rest in this arc shape when they're at his sides. They look like big puffy sleeves. I think I could fix it with a slightly more complicated rig, but for now I just tweaked it manually. Finally, I thought it would be interesting if the paper subtly wrinkled to show his emotions. For example, maybe the wrinkles are positioned like sad eyebrows. I did this by scanning in paper and generating normal maps. It ended up looking like a fleshy, leathery cube, and the more I imagined him having skin, the more I hated it. Ultimately, I decided that the last thing I would make for this video would be this portrait of our robot from the chest up. I think if you add everything together that I've made in this video, it definitely counts as having designed a full robot. I wish I had figured out the panels because I do think he still needs a little something, but I'll work that out later. What occupation do you think this robot would be bad at? And what is he good at? Let me know in the comments. Thank you so much for watching. You can find me on Instagram, TikTok, and I also have a Patreon. All right, goodbye.